Okay, so let's talk about literary elements. We mentioned this a little bit when we read The Bad Case of Stripes, but we need to talk about the 4 main literary elements that we're going to talk about all year. So the first literary element that we're going to talk about this year is setting. The setting of a story is where the story takes place. So I think this picture is a really good representation of setting. It's really important when we're reading and writing stories to pay close attention to the details of the setting so we can make a picture in our mind. For example, when we read Captain Underpants, the setting is the school. So we have to make a picture of what that school is in our mind so we can understand the story better. Another example is Moana, if you've seen that movie. The setting of that movie is mostly in the ocean. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the setting of that story is in the title. It's in a chocolate factory. But they give us so many good details in the reading that we're able to make pictures like this in our mind. Another important literary element is characters. And we talked about this a little bit with Bad Case of Stripes, but the characters are the people or animals or creatures in a story. Look at this picture. Who do you think the characters of this story are? I think the character is the big bad wolf and the 3 little pigs. Some other characters you may be familiar with: Dogman, Harry, Hermione, and Ron, Elephant and Piggy, Ralph, Charlotte and Wilbur, and our friends from The Descendants. So you can see characters aren't just in stories, they're in movies too, and they're just the people, the animals, or the creatures in a story. Our third important literary element is called plot. And that just means what the story is about. So the plot tells us the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story. So if you look over here at this poster, it says the important events in the beginning, middle, and end of a story told in sequential order. That's a big word. And we'll go into that in a little more detail later, but all it means is that we tell a story in the order of events that it happens. So the beginning of stories usually talk about the setting and they introduce you to the characters. In the middle of the story, that's where we find out if there's a problem. And at the end of the story, that's where we solve the problem. So if you think back to A Bad Case of Stripes, in the beginning of the story, we met Camilla and we were introduced to some of the settings, so her house, the school. In the middle of the story, we learned about everything that happened to Camilla because she wouldn't eat her lima beans. So she was changing red, white, and blue. She was turning into her room. That was the big problem of the story. And at the end of the story, the nice old lady gave her some lima beans and solved her problem. So what I just described to you was the plot of A Bad Case of Stripes. The 4th literary element that we'll talk about this year is called theme. And that's a pretty big word. I don't know if you've heard it before, but the theme of a story is the big idea. Maybe you've heard it called the moral of the story. The theme is what the author wants you to learn from reading the story. So if we think about A Bad Case of Stripes, what should we have learned after reading that story? Pause the video, see if you can think about it, and press play when you're ready. Do you think you figured it out? I think that the theme of A Bad Case of Stripes was trying to teach us that we should just be who we are and not worry about what other people think of us. Themes can be different for each story, and different people can have different ideas of what the theme is. These are some common themes that we'll see in fiction stories. And fiction stories mean stories that are made up. But you could say, help those in need, be kind, don't brag, share with others, being honest, don't judge other people, appreciate what you have. Selfishness can have negative consequences. Be true to yourself. When people work together, you can do more. Always do your best. Always be prepared. And don't give up. These are just examples of common themes that you see when you read stories, but there are lots more that we'll read this year as well. So let's think about it. What were the 4 main literary elements that we just talked about that we're going to learn this year? The first literary element we talked about was the setting. And can you remember what the setting is? Yep, it's where the story takes place. The second literary element we talked about were characters. Can you remember what characters were? You got it. It's the people or the animals or the creatures in a story. Then we had plot. Can you remember what plot was? Yep. The plot is the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story. It's what happens in the story. And that last literary element is theme. And the theme is what they wanted us to learn from the story. So remember when we talked about A Bad Case of Stripes, they wanted us to learn that it's okay to be who we are, and we shouldn't worry about what other people think of us. So these are the 4 literary elements that we're going to be working with this year. So when we read stories, think about the setting, the characters, the plot, and the theme.